Another week, another loss. The Terps season will officially be over a week from Saturday with their trip to Ford Field after the 45-20 loss to the Michigan Wolverines at CQ Stadium. Jordan and I dive into some big basketball news, and the Terps are on the march to the College Cup. Let's have a podcast. This podcast is brought to you by VinerX. Your business deserves technology that works as hard as you do. VinerX brings your business enterprise technology that is human first. VinerX aligns technology with your goals, giving you productivity, reliability, and the freedom to scale. From managed IT and communications to business intelligence and cybersecurity, VinerX brings the tools that let you thrive. With VinerX, IT isn't a cost center, it's an investment in your future. Learn more at VinerX.com. Welcome back into another episode of the Terptalk podcast. Jordan, we got a lot to get to, some positive, some negative, some in between. We got it all.
Yeah, we do. We're making up some ground too, Mason, as we missed our midweek show due to some personal commitments that we had this week. But Mason, a lot to get to, like you said. We got to start with the big story of the day, which is the Maryland men's soccer team has advanced to the Sweet 16 after a thriller over North Carolina, Mason. There might be a championship coming to College Park this year with the football that people maybe were not expecting as much.
Yeah, I think it's College Cup or bust for this team. They got the first one. Was not easy against North Carolina team that really packed it in. Went to the counterattack there in the second half. Were able to find an equalizer at 1 and then into the PKs where the Terps take it 4-3 in that frame. Jordan, this team, it's really important when you play an unbeaten season and you finally lose a game to be able to get the next win. And it wasn't easy for these guys today. North Carolina's not a bad team by any stretch. There really aren't bad teams to qualify for this tournament outside of really that one seed matchup, but they find a way to win. They're on to the Sweet 16. They'll play a seeded UConn team next Saturday at 1 o'clock at Ludwig in front of what should be another great crowd. And then it's, on from there, and they'll probably have to go on the road before they make it to the College Cup.
Maybe we'll see, Mason, but a shout out to the Terps on the pitch today, especially the goalkeeper, Lauren Mack, who made 3 saves, but that's not really where he made his mark on this one, stopping 2 PKs at a critical point of the game for those who watched after UNC established an early lead after the Terps missed their first PK opportunity. Mack makes 2 saves, and then Mason, in a true rarity, Sasha Shirofsky and his staff send out the goalkeeper to bury the 5th and final PK to seal the win, Mason, something I've never seen before. But shout out to him, the Big Ten Goalkeeper of the Year, certainly lived up to his name today. And just all around a very good day to be a Terp. Much needed after yesterday's debacle, but we'll save that for the end.
Yeah, and correction on my side, Jordan. SMU, the 5 seed, they're out. They lost to Washington. So the Terps, the highest seeded team left on this side of the bracket.
Oh, well, how about that then? But yeah, we'll see. Saturday's a big day, and we'll keep you guys posted on College Cup coverage as the Terps advance to the field. But a great day for Maryland soccer, and hopefully they can add their 5th national championship to that program this year. Mason, more good news, and probably the biggest story of the whole podcast. Maryland lands its 2nd highest rated men's basketball commit in 247 composite history in Babla Oladuton from Blake High School up by our way in Montgomery County. Mason, no way to slice it other than a massive, massive win for this program and Buzz Williams.
Yeah, I think that this is, it shows the Terps are competitive in the modern era of basketball yet again. First off with the win when they were able to get Derek Queen to commit, and then this class that they've brought in, one of the top 5 classes in all of college basketball, a spot where, in my opinion, Jordan, high school recruiting still matters more so than it does on the football side in basketball. But this was one of those guys you highlighted, being a local guy, a Durant guy, so a Nike kind of AAU circuit player, and he ends up at Maryland. And you look at the other teams involved in this recruitment, Georgetown, but we don't really compete against them that much on the recruiting trail, but they made a solid push into that final 2 in this one. Arkansas, who seemed like they were the favorite for about the month leading up to it, and Kentucky. So a lot of big money, a lot of big name recruiters in that pool, but the Terps, Buzz gets the win. And and there's top tier talent coming to College Park next year. Of the likes of a guy that I'm not really sure if we've seen a player like him at Maryland, with the length, the scoring. He's basically, the NBA prototype. He's a 6'10 scoring kind of wing guard hybrid that can do it all.
Yeah, he really is. Everything you say there rings true, Mason. As I watch the Dallas Cowboys get down to 20 to defeat Philadelphia, hopefully. Um, it's a massive win. There is no other way to look at it other than there's a whole nother side of this actually before I get any further down the path I was going on. This is Buzz's first DMV commit. And by far the biggest one. I mean, Mason and I have been hearing, I'm sure many of you have been hearing about this kid for the better part of 2 years now. It's like you said, Mason, a 6'10 forward with a guard skill set is a highly coveted type player. He was the number one recruit in the class of 27 before he reclassified to 26, which knocked down the rankings a little bit because of his age. And I did go out there to watch his commitment event at Blake last weekend and talking to him and looking at him. I mean, he is. You understand why he fell down the boards after reclassifying. He's a very skinny kid. He's a very slender build. You almost can't believe how tall he is until you get close to him because of how narrow his frame is. So you hope he'll bulk up in the next year and be more ready to take that Big Ten battle. But this started a lot of excitement. Like Mason said, college or high school prospects in basketball are still very, very highly coveted because, I mean, you saw it last year with Cooper Flag. These kids are still the best players on the court when they get to college. That's just how basketball is played. So hopefully he elevates us, and he really does, Mason, move the focus a little bit of the fan base to next year's basketball season already. Because it's going to be exciting, especially if you can bring back some of these guys who are on the team now, Miles Rice, Darius Adams, combined with Caden House, who I know Mason has some mixed opinions on already, and these other kids are bringing in. It's really shaping it to be exciting, and hopefully these kids, once they get here, can bulk up, learn the Buzz system, and I mean, Mason, it's not an exaggeration to say this. I think the fan base is thinking Final Four for 2028 or 2027, excuse me, already.
Yeah, no doubt. I think with the retention for some of these guys that are on this team now that are producing, obviously there's going to need to be some portal work done there to really make that real. But the guys they have coming in, you start to think in the pieces they have, which are going to get that a lot of Big Ten playing experience, and maybe a guy like an Andre Mills kind of moves to the bench at some point once the roster is full, but he's going to get his fill here of big minutes. Um, you'll have the prospects of it, depending on what you can do in the portal to kind of backfill some of the spots.
Well, one thing, Mason, before we move off this topic and onto the actual game that happened this week, which was a crazy experience for anybody who watched it, Mason, is you kind of mentioned this. Maryland seems at least that they are deeply committed to being competitive in basketball, which aligns with something we've talked about a lot, which is the fan base, and I guess now by extension the university has identified this as something that we should and are going to be competitive in. And I don't know if we've seen that level of commitment to football, which is not where I want to bring the conversation right now, but it's very abundantly clear that specifically in this case, men's basketball is a high priority for both the boosters, the fan base, and the university to be competitive in. And we're seeing those resources clearly flood to the program with the kids that are committing to Maryland right now.
Well, I think that this is the difference, right? There's private funding that I think is better organized than what we saw on the football side here, pre-rev share, and then of course the continued commitment of the buy-in of the admin to get this basketball program where it needs to be. And I think you'll see some of the benefits of that with football here in the upcoming year. But look, one place, we're filling our 46,000 seat stadium up a couple times a year. The other place plays in the equivalent of 100 or 90,000 seat stadium. And the building may not be full day in and day out, but let's say if there were 12 games a year, it would be packed to the brim, every single one of them.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's really just the difference. That's the case. I've used that at times when I think we've accepted the results that are lesser than a program that has the fan commitment that we do, as kind of a reason why those coaches should be moved on from. Is this is the top 15 job. This is the fan base that there's few and far between of in this country. And it's produced now 3 straight classes, guys that would be the pieces that you would see in a school like that.
Oh, I think that's a fair way to put it. I mean, We've talked about this. If you go back and look at the pre-hiatus podcast when we were in the throes of the Trojan era, and I'm sure everybody who's listening remembers the I just call it fan civil war that was going on during the Mark Trojan era, as we were very firmly on the we deserve better than this as a program side. Mason's reason we had the fan support, we had the buy-in, we had the facilities, especially now that we should be a top 15, top 10 program. And we've seen that actually quite a bit in the last decade, and hopefully this continues. But Mason, I don't know how you want to define Tuesday's actual basketball game against Mount St. Mary's, other than an absolute trip of a game. Probably one Maryland should have lost. But, shout out Diggy Coit with 41 points, the most a Terp has scored at home in over 50 years. I mean, that's the whole story of the game, Mason. Diggy Coit had a game that I did not know he was capable of having.
Yeah, the guy's a shooter, and we needed him. To me, this story of this game is we're very undermanned right now. I mean, we got guys playing that you didn't really expect would be out there. The bench is really short and has continued to be short, from the preseason to now. And when that's the case, you're going to see games like the one that we did. And Mount St. Mary's, I mean, they were throwing them up and they were finding the back of the net. I don't even know if you're going to play another team that shoots that well this entire season. They were finding 50% from three. They got guys just letting them fly, and they're going in. And the Terps were able to hang in there. They were able to kind of shrink the game down at the end, and then in overtime just kind of power through when the Mount got in foul trouble. But you would hope going into this week with the players era starting tomorrow night, that we're going to see a handful of these guys back on the court, or it's going to be a long week.
Yes, that is certainly true. As I said, Coit finishes with 41 points. Darius Adams finishes with 19 points, 17 of which came at the free throw line, which turned him some, we'll call it PR online. I don't know if it's good PR. But he, gets to the line. Well, I'll give him credit for that. I mean, shooting 4 field goals and 21 free throws is a stat line that you scarcely see at any level of basketball. So I guess shout out for him for drawing the fouls. I don't know what to say about that one. But Mason, to your point of being under man, I mean, Maryland was out rebounded in this game. They desperately need Solomon Washington for Payne, who somehow avoided a serious injury despite what that looked like, back on the floor, and they need them back on the floor this week because we, as Mason said, will not stand much of a chance. Maybe UNLV, although they're a pretty good mid-major, but Gonzaga and other teams in this field, Mason, we are not going to defeat, frankly, with the roster we have right now. I don't want to take anything away from the game on Tuesday, which was a great performance and I will say this, I know it's a low bar to clear, but fantastic effort by this team to not give up. That game did very much looked over in the last minute or two there, but they managed to shoot their way back in on the back of Coit and hung in when it looked hairy. But right now, this team is not meeting expectation I hoped it would, to be frank.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think they're right on line with that. I think it's very challenging to. It's hard to win games when you can't keep a consistent group on the court, and I think that's what we're seeing right now. And what we're going to continue to see here, because then the team's going to have to gel once Solo's back, and Payne's back, and then how do you mix in some of these guys that have shown you something, but you don't not really are sure if they fit in once you have all your pieces. Like where does Turkson fit into this? He didn't really show much, but they surely wanted to give him an opportunity when he was healthy. That's kind of my view on it, Jordan. It's just Metcalf and Alston weren't playing at all, but there you have to have a backup. I think we've shown that we have to have a backup, and then where does Saunders fit in? I think that this team, it's going to be until late December towards January until they kind of come together and you see what the product is that you really should be seeing this week. But just with guys missing time and the team having never played together before, you can't really see it fitting together.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we'll learn a lot this week in Las Vegas. The first game at the time of this taping will be tomorrow at midnight. So for anybody who's brave enough to stay up for those games, Godspeed to you. One of us likely will. Mason, before we get over to the other non-revs real quick, let's just update the women's season. They defeated Bethune-Cookman 95-49 last week, and then just defeated George Mason, A10 power, so decent opponent, 84-62. They have their own big week lined up with number 20 Kentucky in the Puerto Rico Classic beginning on Wednesday. So hopefully we'll see how that group does, Mason. That team, believe it or not, might be even more unproven than the men's side with a lot of freshmen they're depending on, especially with the injuries they have going on over there. So we will see what happens, but we probably won't watch that one as it is on the Betamax existence flow hoops.
Yeah, not a fan of Flow, but
I don't know anyone who is. But we will hopefully get maybe talk to Todd, who I'm sure will brave it and watch the game.
he's
Mason
going
and other.
down there.
Oh, he is. Okay, then we'll definitely maybe we'll get a call in from Todd on the Saturday show for next week. Um, Mason, other non-revs, real quick. Volleyball season mercifully will end soon. They have lost now 5 straight matches, 3 sets to 0. So they've lost 15 straight sets. 4 of them to ranked teams, granted, but that season is just gone into the going to use a term I shouldn't use, has not gone well, we'll just say. But the season will end this week with Oregon and Washington.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any changes there. Jordan, over on the mats, the Terps defeated Gardner Webb in the Citadel last weekend. They also took down Morgan State. They'll travel to American on 12-5. So they're getting through the easy part of their schedule. We'll see what happens when Big Ten play comes around.
Indeed. And then a couple other individual sports we want to update you guys on. The women's tennis pairing we've been following for a while that just advanced to the NCAA tournament. First Terps to do so since 2011. Fell last week to a pair from Oklahoma in back-to-back sets. So that season will end, but a great run for those Terps, and they should be proud of their accomplishments. And then in cross country, Rose Coates competed in NCAA championships, which is a pretty big deal for cross country for those of you who don't know, which I'm assuming is most of you. She's only the 6th Terp ever to run in the national championship event, but she finished 111th at 261. So a pretty solid end to the season for that group. And shout out to Rose and our tennis group for some strong individual seasons, Mason. Let's jump around the conference in a pretty interesting week in the Big Ten, if only for the fact that home teams, let's just say this, Maryland is one of 2 teams to lose at home this week, the other being UCLA. Mason, let's start with the Bruins, who fell 48-14 at the Rose Bowl. And actually, a quick aside, Mason, the UCLA attempt to leave the Rose Bowl, I view as an atrocity to the sport. I'm not going to dive too far into it, but I cannot support that move in any capacity. And I feel it's an obligation to us as college football fans to say that.
Yeah, this game was bad from the Bruins, and they've been bad for a while. They've kind of returned to their pre-Penn State, Maryland win form, and Washington just beat them in every facet of this game, 48-14. It's going to be an interesting coaching search for the Bruins.
It is. Let's go back to the top of the schedule here. Ohio State, look, I'll give Rutgers credit. They fell 42-9 to the number 1 team in the country, but Rutgers was in this game for about 2.5 to 3/4 of it.
Yeah, they just couldn't find it on offense, Jordan. And then Julian Saint's he's just too much. He's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback right now in college football. And even without Jeremiah Smith and Cartel Tate, Ohio State is just, they're freakishly good.
Yeah, they are. It'll be tough to see another team raising the trophy in January, but who knows? We got to play the games. Northwestern, shout out to the Wildcats, who finally earned their 6th win, defeating Minnesota 38-35 at Wrigley. Mason, Northwestern is going bowling.
Yes, they are, Jordan. And look, this is one that PJ Fleck's going to want to have back. But it was back-to-back last-second games for the Cats at Wrigley. They lose last week in a heartbreaker to Michigan. They find a way on Saturday against the Minnesota team. It's been an up-and-down year for the Gophers, but Northwestern, I mean, it's a lot of credits due to their coaching staff. These guys are tough. They come prepared. They're able to pull out their 6th win of the season. They got a good chance to get number 7 next week, too.
Let's see here. Iowa wins a nail biter over Michigan State. On the last play of the game, the Hawkeyes sink a field goal to defeat Sparty 20-17. Mason, a good effort for Michigan State team that's been reeling, and a bit of a disappointing showing from Iowa, despite the fact they did win.
No doubt. Iowa needed 2 scores in the last minute, and I think it was 45 seconds in this one to come away with the win. Michigan State, they were kind of leading this game because of Iowa unable to kind of take it from them, and then at the end, the Hawkeyes find it. They're 7-4 heading into their rivalry game against Nebraska.
Speaking of the Cornhuskers, I challenge anybody who had to have a worse week than Nebraska did, who got housed at Penn State 37-10 on the road, Mason. A Nebraska season that was looking promising at one point has thoroughly derailed now.
Yeah, without their starting quarterback, this team, they found a way to win against UCLA, but Penn State was able to bear down, stop the run, and Nebraska just nothing through the air. It's a lot of calls for the interim up there in Happy Valley to get the job.
There are, and I really don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see how the Kendrick pool looks out. Penn State fights for win number 6 next week against Rutgers. Mason, I said no one had a worse week than Nebraska, which you could argue is true. However, number 21 Illinois made a strong case for it, losing. Honestly, we watched a chunk of this game pretty badly to Wisconsin, 27-10. Shout out Wisconsin, who has found some momentum late in the season here. But I mean, Illinois, you could actually make an argument has a more disappointing season than Maryland did this year.
Yeah, it's been rough, and this was ugly in every way. Um, Wisconsin able to stop the run, something that we weren't able to do, and then Luke Altmaier was just off in this game. Uh, Wisconsin's finding some offense with their third string quarterback out there, but Jordan at one point in the second half he was 4 for 6, and the team had a total of like 65 passing yards. But they find ways to win. They're playing Big Ten football, and you know what? This is why they kept Luke Fickell. They think he can turn it around, and he's making strides towards doing that.
Hey, if
Back to back
Wisconsin,
ranked wins.
I was gonna say, if Wisconsin can pull it off against Minnesota next week, they could end the season with 3 straight wins. I mean, that would be after the start to the season they had Mason out. You'd have to think of that as a pretty large accomplishment for that group. To cap it off, Mason, the Pac-12 throwback game of USC at Oregon. USC falls 27-42 to the Ducks. But you know what? I know there's no more victories, and USC is a very proud program. I'm sure they don't want to hear it, but they brought it. They played really well in this game. I did think. I mean, Oregon is a better team. There's no doubt about that. But USC looked like they belonged in this game, Mason, and they really could have pulled it off.
Yeah, but that's not enough, and it's been all over the USC kind of you know media. Basically, it's not only the fan-based media, but just the media. That's not the standard they've have as a program. Is not to compete, and there's a lot of negativity around Lincoln Riley and not being able to win these games, and he's had a couple shots at him during his time as the head coach. But this was more of the same in the last 10 years for USC. They just have not been able to win games like this, and a lot of disappointment from the Trojans fan base. For Oregon, they needed this one. This kind of close to punches the ticket to the playoff, and just a big win for them in their program. For Dante Moore to kind of bounce back against a nationally ranked team and have a good game on offense was huge, I think, for him and for where he's at as a player. And look, it's a good win for Oregon. But USC, Jordan, this is a championship standard program, and to be number 15 and be in the picture is being 6-6 or 7-5 to us.
Yeah,
It's okay for a little bit, but it's not good in the long run.
No, it's not. And USC, as we just said, is a very proud program. I mean, ESPN just redid their all-time rankings for college football, and USC, I think, was 5 or 6 in that. And they have the backing financially from their donors, and they have everything going for them you could hope for. They have the market, they have the history, they got the facilities, they have the funding. They should be a top. I mean, this program for a majority of its life was arguably the best program in college football. And to your point, Mason, they hired Lincoln Riley to take the next step. Hasn't happened yet. They're not going to make a change this year. But to your point, even me just talking about them and the way I did, is probably a bit of a slap in the face to their program. So we'll see what happens there. USC, Mason, we've said before, is one of those programs like legitimately has a chance to pull in any coach of the day. The case in point, they have Lincoln Riley now. So we will see how it goes for them out there. But Mason, I'm ready for this football season to be over. Just put it like that.
Yeah, without a doubt, Jordan. And it felt like that. It felt like that when we were doing the post game last night, and it feels like that getting on this podcast right now. It's just a season to me of missed opportunity. It just feels like the entire season. It's just another missed opportunity. Yesterday came in the form of the early interception opportunity after the game being tied up there, and you're not able to reel that in and kind of start what you don't really know for Michigan after last week's struggle, what that kind of would have done to them to be down on the road, to get the fans in the game, to just, be in the game. We're dropping touchdowns. We're dropping fourth down and third down conversions. We're not helping our young quarterback out. We're unable to run the ball. And frankly, we were not able to block at the level we've been able to block at the entire rest of the season yesterday. And we were just beating every facet of the game, and things just kind of slipped away from us from that drive to start the second half that we gave up to that nonsense roughing the passer call that led to that touchdown. And it's like every time there was just a glimmer of hope, Michigan was able to meet that moment. So credit to them on that, the way that they prepared, the way they came out and played. And frankly, Jordan, it feels like 2019 or 2020. We are not physically competitive at the line of scrimmage on defense enough to be in these games. We've now given up 180 or more rushing yards in, I believe, all but one conference game, or all but not the Wisconsin game, not the Washington game, but every game since then. And from my seat, and those of you that listen, I'm as negative on the coaching staff and have questioned our effort and our resolve mentally, both on the field and in the coaching. For that to be the case, spending more than half the game down on the field last night, I don't think we got the guys. And I don't know if that's a resources problem, if that's a scouting problem, if that's the change of scheme from one DC to the next, and not getting guys in place quick enough around them to kind of build up this team and recruit well out of the portal. But we're not there. And I sure hope, Jordan, that this was really looked at as a 2-year plan, when Damon was calling the shots. And in some ways, it almost has to be. Like Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis, they can't compete on the edge against grad transfer or graduate student left and right tackles in the run game. They can get after the pass game they did yesterday, and they were able to make some plays. But we just don't have the depth and experience and strength and conditioned guys to go out there and be able to stop the run. And at this point, that's the Achilles heel of this team. The defense, with this turnover margin this year, like there's just ridiculous stats around this team. We should have more wins, but we don't. And I don't think we have the guys to compete up front. We're going to need to go in the portal and get 20 plus guys that can play.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, Mason. I mean, a lot of it's what you said yesterday, both to me and in the post-game show. Excuse me. You mentioned one Achilles heel, which is obviously stopping the run. And let me rewind a little bit here. The game day atmosphere seemed pretty good out there. I would not go attend this game in person. Mason and I had out-of-town family in town, and I like to stay home. Mason went to the game to cover it for us. The crowd was pretty thorough out there, and one thing, I don't like starting beef, but I do have to address this. There are certain media members out there that are pushing a narrative that we have nobody at these games that I just think is absurd and incorrect. And I cannot, like, we have been critical of this department. We've been critical of the coaching staff, and continue to do that as much as we determine is fair. However, flat out falsehoods regarding this department and the fan support here is not something that needs to be pushed. We already know there's problems, and we know they do exist, but it's just wrong information at this point that's being put out there regarding our actual attendance at these games, Mason. And we have a platform, and I feel the need to say something regarding it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was an incredible amount of credit is due to Joe LeBoux and his staff and what they've been able to do here. I mean, if you look back at the attendance numbers to Maryland football over the entire Damon Evans era, whatever the new sold out attendance number is, we weren't getting fans in the stadium. It just wasn't happening. We have seen, in my opinion, 2 games this year with predominantly Maryland fans in the seats in a near sold out, or what actually are official sellouts to this team. Washington game, and there really were not that many Indiana fans at the Indiana game. Now,
Yep.
yesterday, there were a crap ton of Michigan fans at the game, but it seems like the student overflow was removed, and there were people sitting in the last row of the upper deck in the seats that, everybody was saying were empty when there was a sellout, in quotes. These games are sold out. There are more fans in that building than I've seen on a regular basis since 2007,
Yeah, I was gonna say
2008.
2008. Yeah.
I mean, this is what we asked for. We need revenue. We need people in the stadium. We're getting that. The negativity that is felt from some of these media channels that are run by, frankly, from the student media and their need and the modern need, just in general media, when it comes to sports, politics, music coverage, everything is this e-news, TMZ push for, I got to be the guy that posts the picture of the empty stadium that, gets retweeted by somebody else so my name pops off. Everybody's chasing the scoop, right? Everyone's chasing a picture that gets the Twitter clicks. It is just a nature of what's been done to modern media. That's, some people say, and it's not really a topic for this podcast, it's like the destruction of civilization in some ways. It's just such a change to the way people look at everything, because everybody's got the camera out and they want to be the guy that's got the picture or the photo, or they write the story that may or may not be 100% true to get there. There was a point at that game, Jordan, on Saturday, and it took a while because the traffic management was very poor. It took a lot of people a lot of time to get from like Campus Drive actually onto campus, parked into the stadium, and the students kind of filed in. I feel like once the game it didn't immediately start as a blowout, some more people decided to attend the game. The only seats that were really empty, like pockets of real visible bench, were students that didn't show. Right? Student tickets that were unclaimed with the break coming up and this team not doing well. We clearly have the ability, and I've said this on the show, on the post games, and I might have said it on here. Maryland has fans. This mass conspiracy that we don't have fans is absurd. It's been proven to be incorrect by a competent admin in the last 3 months. What we need to do is win games. The rest of everything will come if we can be like 7-5 and competitive.
All
You'll
right.
have the
Well,
chance to make the jump. But we can't sit around here and frankly be less than what the sum of our parts and expect people to show up in droves. Just doesn't work.
all right. Well, we've derailed this conversation quite enough, but I do want to conclude this tangent we're on with a reminder. We are Maryland fans, and we are very honest about that. But we also will not shy away from criticism when it's due. And this particular point is just incorrect, which is why we feel the need to say something about it. If anybody wants to disagree with that, use the comments, shoot us a DM, that's fine. But as Mason said, and anybody watching the game on TV, like I was or was there, like Mason was, could see that that stadium did fill up. And this narrative being pushed that it was empty and another fake sellout is just a factual, inaccurate statement. Moving on to the football game. And Mason, what I was going to say before I took us on that path was you mentioned one Achilles heel, defending the run, which I also want to point out Cam Rice and Ian Thomas, I do think are good players. They're just not enough depth behind them. I also shout out Daniel Wingate, who plays possibly his last game at Maryland at linebacker. I know he's a junior, Mason. He can go pro, he could transfer, but I do want to shout out his effort again. But the other Achilles heel, which frankly doomed the Terps, I felt like this game and several other games this year, was again the receivers just dropping the ball, very literally dropping the ball. It can't happen. We're not good enough to make the difference up. When there are plays to be made, they have to be made. And I don't feel like we're asking too much of these receivers at this point. Like, yeah, occasionally get separation, but when the ball is there on time and it's in your hands, A couple of those were harder catches to make, and I'm not calling those out, but they're just easy drops being made. Dorian Fleming had one where it hit off his chest pad, I think on 3rd and 9 or something like that earlier in the game. Like those are the plays that are huge momentum swings that we just can't stomach as a team right now because we don't have enough talent to make that happen a bunch of times.
Yeah, Jordan, I don't know the talent, I appreciate those things. There's not that much margin in these games, period. It doesn't really matter who you are. We're dropping first downs. The chain effect to dropping these passes beyond being able to score on that drive or just, the field position, everything factors in. We're dropping passes that are getting intercepted inside our own 30-yard line. That's on us. We're dropping first downs when we're driving down the field. We're dropping touchdown passes. It's just like no further comment. We've dropped games, literal games, where we've had the opportunity to overcome, but we can't help ourselves finish. That's not on the coach. It's just not. That's on guys to execute what they're supposed to do, what they're paid to do. Can't tell me we're looking at those 3 receivers and the tight end, and those guys aren't paid significantly to do their job. We're not doing our job. Cost us a season. It turned it into a lost season. There are plenty of other things you can look at and stare at on that, but all those numbers look less than if we just finished plays. It's like when we don't tackle on defense.
To Mason's
the
point
simple
here,
things. We just
at
don't
some
do
point, it is just execution. I mean, and you can blame the coaching staff for a lot of things, but Mason and I also agreed to not bring that up as much. There's no point. He's coming back next year. But I mean, for people who criticize Loxley, which, fair, if you want to do that, there's plenty to criticize. That's your decision. But like, he can't catch the ball for these guys. He can't make the throws.
And you know what, Jordan? I'm critical of us not catching the ball. I don't want this to sound like I'm making excuses for the coaching staff, because we're 11 games in and we had to use 2 timeouts because we don't have enough guys on the field. Like, what is that? If we can't self-operate, then somebody needs to operate for us, which has to be the coaches. And to that point, the guys who drop these passes, they're still in the game. So I don't really know what we're doing there either. But there is blame to go around when it comes to this. And I didn't feel like yesterday's game was lost in coaching, but we're just not that close. The teams from now, what's about to be 3 years ago, that could compete in this game is not what's on the field right now.
Yeah, someone made Go ahead.
If you look up and down those rosters of those teams, and you look at the number of guys that are either currently in the NFL, in the XFL, or playing professional football elsewhere, like the CFL, that's a long list of guys, especially on the offensive line and the defensive line. And if you go back and you're just, just kind of paints the picture, guys like, Tommy Akimisote and stuff like that, they weren't getting that much time. Guys in the NFL right now, playing defensive line. There are guys on that first level that didn't make it, but they were 5th and 6th year guys out there. And I think that, and I sure as hell hope that it's just an NIL gap, and we're going to be able to make some of that up here and get back to evaluating talent and getting some of these things right and upgrading our level of play on the field through just getting some better parts. I don't think that's the whole story, but you look at those teams compared to what we got now, and just guy for guy, we're just not on that level. And it shows obviously in the quarterback, it shows in the receivers, but up front, both offensive and defensive lines, we're far from where we were then.
Yeah, we are. I don't really have much else to add, although I do want to make a quick remark here. One of my favorite subgenres in this podcast when Mason says no comment and then talks for 4 more minutes. It's a long no comment. Mason, I will derail it from Maryland for 1 minute to talk about something we both expressed strong distaste for because again, we have a platform. I feel like it's something worth talking about, which is, and it's gonna be a little bit out of field. The way some of these Group of Five teams are being treated and discussed and ranked is something that Mason and I are both very displeased by. I can see the eye roll, Mason. I'll let you go off if you so desire.
Now, I'm not going to go off on it. I just think that there's a conspiracy in this modern way that was supposed to be removed by the removal of the BCS system that is clearly not done. I mean, guys can 11-1 football teams are not bad. They deserve to be ranked. The ACC has lost its ability to put a playoff worthy team out on the field. When Georgia Tech lost that game yesterday, that was it. They're done. James Madison will go up to any one of those stadiums and beat that team's ass. It's just simple. You get an 11-1 football team, a program at this point, going back to the FCS that has consistently put winning football teams on the field that win 9 and 10 games every single year. They deserve the spot. They do. And because we got TV deals and those guys are, pulling the strings on who's getting what and all that, and the quote unquote the eye test that they use these things under, give me the computer ranked nonsense back. Get those clowns out of that room in their, courtyard 3-star hotel in God knows where, Texas. Get them out. They're done. It's just like, and I don't understand why this league or this combination of leagues does this. It's like on the lacrosse side when we have active head coaches on the selection committee. You're telling me that guy he's not going to benefit his draw or his friends that have gotten other jobs? There aren't people without bias that care enough about football to watch football objectively and make these rankings. So maybe it's time for the AI overlords to step in. I got no idea, but that's nonsense. James Madison deserves to be in the playoff if they win out. And the fact that they're not ranked is just a sham. It's a disgrace to the sport.
Well, I do think Mason can get hyperbolic with some of this stuff. I do. The disgrace to the sport is exactly the word I want to use. The way, even Tulane, the way these teams are being treated and ranked and talked about, which that's something Mason and I have talked about too. This ACC/SEC, who have these deals with ESPN, who has to deal with the playoff rankings, who controls the main way discourses put out with college football, is clearly a feedback loop to benefit certain parties. And the fact that we're calling this unbiased is absurd at this point.
Yeah, it really is. And look, it makes me love the Big Ten more. Because the Big Ten, and this kind of feeds into it, Jordan, you just can't not talk about them. I like that the Big Ten isn't on ESPN. That's what I guess what I'm trying to say. And it's still forced themselves into being talked about because of the programs that are in there and because of the platform that it has. But the disrespect for Big 12 football, which is, it's not great, but
it's good.
Better than the ACC.
You can't tell me BYU and Utah and Texas Tech are not really, really good football teams at this point.
I think you go a layer deeper than that. The middle of that conference is strong. Iowa State, Kansas State,
Arizona's 8-3.
Baylor, Arizona, they're not bad. They're not bad. They deserve more credit. They deserve more publicity. But the mistreatment of the Sun Belt and the leagues at that level it's bad. It's just bad taste. Even the American to some level is. I mean, the American's not good, but the top teams in it are. And I just feel like, you're going to go stick these teams in the Gasparilla Bowl or the Cure Bowl or whatever, and the Pop-Tart Bowl. And the teams at the top of these leagues, they should be ranked and they should get their shot. And that was one of the promises of the playoff, the expanded playoff, and they're throwing it out. And it's ugly. Boise State should have shown you that last year.
Yeah, they should have.
They can compete.
Well, we had to get that in. I know it's not Maryland related, but I think, like we said, we have a platform, and it is wrong to the sport. It is a disservice to the sport way this is being conducted. Mason, you got any last words on the Terps this week?
One last shot on Saturday, and look, it might not mean much to either team. Well, I think it might not mean much to the fans of either teams. Matters to the guys on the field to finish this thing outright. Matters to us in recruiting to be a game better than last year, to win 2 games on the road in this conference against fairly notable programs. Even though Michigan State has been bad over the past couple years, just right the ship, get it going in the right direction into the off season. And I can't believe that we're here. I can't believe the season's over. I can't believe that we botched it away. But it, again, like I say, and I've said it frequently, when you feel like you needed energy in this, you're only guaranteed a certain number of opportunities to play this game once you get to this level. And to the guys in the locker room, that's really all that should count going into Saturday. And what's going to be a pretty dead environment is we got to bring it our internal fire to get this thing going back the right way. So I'm looking at all those young leaders in the room about what kind of energy they can produce this week to get these guys ready to go and kind of carry their teammates that might have kind of mentally lost their will at this point to finish. But got to finish strong. Got to get things right and get some blood into this locker room that can compete in the trenches, or get more blood in the locker room that can compete at the trenches at the level that we're asked to on a week in and week out basis. Because next year, schedule's not getting any easier with old buddy heading down to Blacksburg.
Oh no, Blacksburg heading to us, but your point stands. Yes. We'll talk about it at some point though. We had a long enough show as it is. We'll be back in the midweek after the Players Era wraps up. We'll learn a lot about this basketball team this week, and we'll try to focus on football one more time. But it's been a long season for this football program, Mason. It's been 64 days as of today since we won a game.
And the Orioles have won a game more recently than Maryland football.
Well, I did not know that one, Mason. Shows you how long it's been. Yeah, it's been a tough end of the season. There's no end ifs and buts about that one. Hopefully, basketball season will go better. We'll know a lot more about that come Wednesday when that wraps up. Until then, everybody, stay safe. Go Terps. For those of you who are staying up for the Players Era tournament, make sure you brew some coffee. It's gonna be a long night, but hopefully we'll get some Terp W's out of it. Until then, stay safe. Go Terps, and we'll talk to you again in about 3 or 4 days.